Hey everybody, Ijaz here, back with another video, and today we're talking about the buy now pay later space because this space is about to skyrocket. Square yesterday just announced the massive acquisition of Australian-based company AFTERPAY for 29 billion. Yep, 29 billion US dollars in stock. Now, let's take a look into the buy now pay later space and try to establish why is Square chasing a company with up to 30% of their market capitalization paid. Let's take a look. So there's a few different things we need to touch upon here. We're going to touch upon the buy now, pay later, pure fintech new companies, let's call them that, the companies that are just focused on doing the buy now, pay later. And we'll also look at some of the other threat of incumbents who may be able to pivot across to the buy now, pay later space. But first, let's look at what Square said. Square said they wanted to see, they believe that Afterpay would increase revenue for their merchants. Square is saying they're focused on delivering for their merchants, and that if they offer this as a service, it will help their merchants do more business, right? By offering this service, it will help them close more deals, and what's better for their merchants is ultimately better for Square. Now, I'm hugely invested in Square. I've actually got about 6.5% of my portfolio currently, around about that amount in Square. I believe in their business model. I feel like they've done a great job with the SMEs and the small businesses over the years. And I think that's a great statement for them to make. They're focused on delivering for their merchants and not necessarily just for the technology, right? Just not after the fees or in the credit game, so to speak. Now, a few interesting stats. More than a third of US consumers used a buy now, pay later offering by July 2020. It's the fastest growing category in payments and is projected to more than double its market share in North America from 1.6% in 2020 to 4.5% in 2024. That was according to the Global Payments Report. Now, the way the business model tends to work is they would charge a fee anywhere from 3 to 7% of the purchase normally. Now, we don't know exactly what Square's plan is, but that's the typical situation. Now, the other interesting segment here, and one of the reasons why a lot of analysts are saying Square may have opted for acquiring Afterpay, was to try to attract the younger customer. So Square had traditionally struggled with a lot of that younger customer. They've done better in 2020 as things started to lock down and stimulus checks started to come in and with success of their Cash App. But they feel like the Afterpay acquisition will really help them go after that younger demographic who want to take out a small buy now, pay later installment and pay over the next 2 to 3 months for the product which they want, but their paycheck doesn't allow it just yet. Now, as a disclaimer, I don't agree with this as a financial methodology. I feel like you should only spend within your means. So for me, buy now, pay later isn't something I would personally use. But it's interesting to see that that's where the world, and it started a lot in Europe, but now, particularly in the Western world as well, now this buy now, pay later trend is really starting to kick off. So let's go back to my mind map and let's take a look at the different players. So you got to, as I mentioned, you've got a few, let's bring this over here. You've got a few key pure play players. So let's start off. You've got Affirm, which everybody knows. You've got Afterpay, who's just, as I mentioned, been acquired by Square. And then you've got players such as Klarna in Europe. And then we'll come on to some of the more mixed plays. So let's take a look at Affirm. So Affirm have a market capitalization of 17 billion. Their trailing 12-month revenue was 762 million, with a net income of 242 million of of 242 million. Okay, so they're trading at 700 odd million, but they're making a 200 million loss. Affirm. Now they claim to be operating across 6,000 merchants, and they deal with some brands such as Walmart, Aldi, Expedia. Now, excuse that one. That one is supposed to be over there. Acquired by Square for 29 billion. That was Afterpay. Now, moving on to Afterpay, they have a revenue of 37 billion. Their trailing 12-month revenue was 644 with a net income of minus 67. So not as big of a loss as we can see with Affirm with their 240 loss, but a far greater market capitalization. Okay. Now, the interesting thing here is this, the revenue that Afterpay brings to the table is about 4% of Square's revenue. So the question comes, why would Square pay up to 30% of their market capitalization, 29 billion. And we can head down here. We can see Square's market capitalization is about 124. So let's say a quarter. Why would they pay a quarter of their market capitalization for a company which is going to bring in about 4% of revenues, and their growth rate is slower than Square's itself? And that's where it comes to Jack Dorsey believing that this will help us get the younger audience. It'll be better for our merchants, and therefore, in the long run, help Square's revenue. Okay, so for me, this seems like a revenue play on the Square side. Square feel like if they can get involved in this buy now, pay later space, it can increase their revenues, and the operational efficiencies in the Square machine will spit out far more than the 29 billion they're going to outpay over the next kind of 5 to 10 year horizon span. It's also testament to the fact that Jack Dorsey understands that this space, the buy now, pay later space, is really starting to kick off, and he knew that he had to make a move quickly. And we'll come on to why in a second. I mean, let's look at Klarna. Now, for a lot of you in other countries or other territories, you may have not heard of Klarna. But to give you an idea, Klarna operates across 17 different countries, and they have arrangements with H&M, IKEA, Samsung, Peloton, Nike. They actually claim to have 250,000 partners. To put that into perspective, Afterpay were claiming they have 3.6 million users on their platform, and Affirm had 6,000 merchants, right? And they deal with Walmart, Audi, as I mentioned. But 250 partners, and look at that market cap of 31 billion, and their revenues were 11 billion, with a net income of 900 million. Okay, and they recently raised a round for 1 billion, and they're backed by Sequoia, BlackRock, Creandum, a really big business. So they're really doing well, Klarna. And you can see it in these European countries, particularly here in the UK. We do see Klarna out and about advertising, marketing. And this is the point I want to touch on. Just before I head into, I want to touch upon the banks, actually. Let's touch upon the banks first. So now, Barclays have recently done a partnership with Avant, again, to kind of move across into the buy now, pay later space. And what Barclays are saying is, hang on a second. These fintech startups aren't used to running credit businesses like we are. They don't have the balance sheets like we do. This is our space. We should be able to operate far better. And here's a statement from Denny Newland, the CEO of Barclays US Consumer Bank. He said, if we can deliver the same product that customers want with the same speed and slick integration and digital interface that fintechs provide, but can do it in a way that enhances our partners' brand and relationship with their most valuable customers, we think that's a big deal. Guess what? I feel like Danny Nielsen's absolutely spot on. He's right. But here's the big if. If we can deliver a product with the same speed and slick integration and digital interface that fintech provides. And this is the key battleground now. Because on the one side, you've got these pure players, right? You've got these Klarnas and Affirm and Afterpay who understand the mindset of consumers. They're coming at this from a marketing point of view and really trying to go direct to consumer with the offering, versus your traditional slow-moving banks who go, hang on, we know how to run credit businesses, we should be better placed. But really, are they? If they don't have the marketing piece on top, can they operate? Or will the fintechs be able to figure out the banking piece once they've dealt with the marketing and they've had that massive growth? So this is going to be a key battleground here. And just coming, so that was your banks, right? So we've mentioned the pure plays. We've mentioned that the banks are trying to get into the buy now, pay later space. Everyone wants to get involved. But then let's look at these hybrid plays. So Square is one of these. I'll put Square in that category, and we can see that Square, if we flick back over, we can see that Square is sitting at a market cap of about 124 billion. So you can see this is a magnitude greater than the market caps of the pure plays, the Klarnas, the Affirms, the Afterpays. But it's still, it's still very small compared to your Visas at 526 billion, and definitely the banks, and I'll come on to Apple and Amazon shortly. So they should be able to bring a lot of the infrastructure to these small companies. So with the acquisition of Afterpay, it should bring a lot of that mass, and there should definitely be a lot of synergies there. So if we if we look at the next one, you've got PayPal. So PayPal is sitting at 318 billion of market cap, and they've just introduced their Pay in 4, right? Pay in 4 installments. That's their effort to move into the buy now, pay later space. And they're coming at this with a pay no extra. So to the merchants, so the shops that operate PayPal, they're saying when you're not going to have to pay for this. So whether traditional businesses operate between 3 to 7% of the purchase to the business owner, PayPal are saying you won't need to pay anymore. They feel like as long as they can keep those merchants in their ecosystem and give them more value adds, that's more important. They're playing the long game. And it'll be interesting to see what Square does after the acquisition goes through with a firm, with Afterpay. Will they go down the route of saying, let's not have any fees, let's make this a completely free offering for our merchants? Because like Jack Dorsey said, and we started off with this, he said he wants to increase revenue for merchants. So if he's in this game for the long run to say, we just want to, if merchants are asking for this because their customers are asking for it, let's provide it and let's not make it prohibitive. So PayPal started off with this Pay in 4. It's in 4 countries at the moment, UK, US, France, and they've just kicked off in Australia, which is where Afterpay is growing and the buy now later space is really rapidly growing in Australia. So it'll be really interesting to see how they progress. Now, let's move on to Visa. Bit more of an incumbent, not quite a bank, but definitely, the generation before a PayPal or a Square in terms of their technical thinking and marketing prowess. So Visa are sitting on 526 billion of market cap, and they've just introduced their system called Visa Installments. Exactly the same. They want to be able to offer people direct now, Visa customers, to buy now and pay later. So very interesting that they're in this space too. Will they make an acquisition or will they just continue doing this themselves? It'll be interesting to watch and see how that plays out. We spoke about the banks and Barclays with a van, and don't be surprised if other banks now come across and start doing their own acquisitions in this space. And then finally, just want to touch upon the 2 mammoths. So if with all this activity going on, it's clear that the buy now, pay later space is not going anywhere. It's a rapidly growing industry. The stats are phenomenal. Like I mentioned earlier at this, the fastest growing category in payments, and it's projected to more than double from 1.6% to 4.5% in 2024. So the next 4 years, or 3 years left now, are really going to be massive. And more than a third of US consumers used a buy now, pay later offering. Okay. So what does that mean for Amazon and Apple? Do we think they're just going to sit around and not enter this space? Naturally, they will. And the question will be, will they want to partner? Or are they going to go ahead and want the whole pie to themselves and develop this themselves? So definitely one to watch out. This space is going to be moving rapidly over the next 3 to 4 years, like we've just said. And it's definitely one you want to keep an eye on. So have a look at those companies, have a look at their figures, try to understand kind of who's going to be the players in this market. But a really interesting acquisition there by Square. And the stock price rose by 10% yesterday, which was intriguing because after the deal was announced, it was actually down in pre-market. But then along with their mixed earnings reported where they missed revenue but beat their earnings on the profitability, they were up 10%. Is this going to be cost effective for Square? Time is to tell. It's an interesting acquisition. It's just, have they overpaid? That's the question. 29 billion, 25 to 30% of their market cap for what's going to contribute 4% of their revenues. I'm sure they have a plan. It'll be interesting to see how do they create those synergies after the acquisition with Afterpay. Will it help Square attract the younger demographic? Will it help their merchants stay more loyal to their brand? And because they're offering more services, does it make them less likely to leave the Square ecosystem? That's going to be really interesting. Okay, so guys, that's a short deep dive into the buy now, pay later space. We'll definitely keep an eye on this one over the next period of time, and I'll update you if there's anything to update on in this space. All right, see you guys in the next one.